Welcome to the Innovation Series, where I take you on a journey to build complex technology from scratch, step by step, from idea to reality. The main topic of this video is activities chain. We will discuss what an activities chain is, and I will demonstrate to you how to create an activities chain. Let's start with the definition of an activities chain. What is an activities chain? It is a series of activities that describe interaction between the device and the entity or the user in order to achieve a particular goal. Pay attention to the emphasis here. The emphasis is on the goal. The goal is a crucial component that must be present in the activity chain. In real life, users can interact with a device in countless ways. However, describing every possible interaction randomly adds little value to the innovation process. To create a strong initial concept, we should focus on key goals based on the device's intended use. Interactions that do not contribute to these goals can be discarded, allowing us to prioritize only those that enhance the core functionality. That is the main reason of creating the activity chain as a structured way to define interactions leading to a specific goal. Additionally, the activity chain includes goal descriptions and detailed interaction specifications, adding an extra layer of detail that brings it closer to the final product. One of the best ways to learn is through demonstration, so I will guide you step by step in creating an activity chain. Before we begin, let me show you what we will create. We will create an activity chain with a single goal and consisting of 8 activities. The goal for our activities chain is for the projectile to be thrown. Additionally, the activities chain consists of 8 activities. It starts with activity 1 or A1, where the user transfers mechanical energy to the catapult, and ends with activity 8 or A8, where the catapult pushes the projectile. These 8 activities describe how the device interacts until the goal is accomplished. This is an example of what the activities chain shall look like. It consists of statements that describe a series of interactions to accomplish a particular goal. Now that you've seen the example of the activity chain, the next question is, how do we systematically create an activity chain? I will describe the formula for constructing the activities chain. First, we need to define a clear goal. Once the goal is established, the next step is to determine the activities sequentially. Similar to the primary concept, each activity in the chain is described in terms of its function and operation. Although the activity chain outlines both the function and operation, we also need to add an additional level of specification to ensure that the sequence of activities aligns logically to achieve the goal. I will provide a guide on analyzing activities in sequence. First, identify the initial activity, which can be either operational or functional. Once the initial activity is determined, the next step is to identify what follows. To analyze this systematically, I introduce 2 formulas. Formula FA1. Consider how the device responds to the previous activity. For example, if the previous activity involves a user operating the device, analyze how the device reacts. If there is no response from the device, proceed to the next formula. Formula FA2. Determine what additional operations are needed to achieve the goal. In many cases, multiple user operations are required rather than just one. If no further device response is found using formula FA1, apply formula FA2 to identify necessary additional operations. This structured approach ensures a comprehensive analysis of activity sequences and effectively covers most cases in an activity chain. After completing several activities, we can stop analyzing them once the goal is reached. At this point, the process of identifying and describing functions and operations concludes. You will have a comprehensive list of activities, from start to finish, needed to achieve a specific goal. Now that we've covered the step-by-step formula for creating an activity chain, let's demonstrate how to build one. First and foremost, we need to define a single goal. What goal should we use? Let's borrow one from the primary concept. The last sentence of the primary concept implies the main goal. The projectile possesses kinetic energy, or, in simpler terms, the projectile is thrown. We can choose this as our goal, so our goal is for the projectile to be thrown. Now, let's analyze the activities that lead to this goal. Remember, according to the formula, each activity must be associated with a specific function or operation. Let's break it down step by step. To assist first-time learners in building an activity chain, I've included an illustration of a catapult to help visualize the process. The first activity involves the user performing an operation on the catapult. What is the first operation? The user must transfer mechanical energy to the catapult. So, we can write Activity 1, or A1, the user transfers mechanical energy to the catapult. Let's reflect on this choice of wording. I've specifically used transfer mechanical energy instead of a more specific term such as mechanically push. By doing so, I've intentionally included other possibilities of operation, not just limited to pushing. If the catapult were operated by pulling using a rope, then it could still be within the scope of this concept. This is an essential principle of building an activity chain. We must clearly define the scope of the operation and function relevant to the concept we are working on. Now that we have identified the initial activity, let's analyze the next one. According to the guide, we begin with formula FA1, examining how the device responds. The previous activity, Activity 1 or A1, is the user transfers mechanical energy to the catapult. Now, we ask, how does the catapult respond to this energy transfer? In other words, how does the catapult react? It is up to us to conceptualize the catapult's response, and there may be multiple possible answers. However, the key is to select the next activity that brings us closer to achieving our goal. Now, let's decide on the next activity. Since the user transfers mechanical energy to the catapult, we expect the catapult to store this energy. Therefore, we define Activity 2, or A2, as the catapult stores the energy from the user. Now that we have Activity 2, or A2, let's apply formula FA1 again to determine the next activity. With the catapult now storing energy, how does it respond? Obviously, we do not want it to store energy indefinitely or release it all at once. Instead, we want the catapult to stop storing energy at a specific point and retain it. This means the catapult must detect a certain position or condition where energy storage should stop, and then lock into place to prevent the energy from being released prematurely. In this context, I refer to this position as the ready position. Once the catapult reaches this position, it must lock the stored energy. This scenario demonstrates the application of formula FA1 twice. The first response is for the catapult detect ready position. The second response due to the first response is for the catapult to lock it in place. As a result, our analysis identifies two new activities. We define Activity 3, or A3, as the catapult detects the projectile container reaches a ready position. Following this, we define Activity 4, or A4, as the catapult locks the projectile container in position. These two activities, A3 and A4, ensure that the catapult stops storing energy and securely retains the energy. This concludes the first half of the activities chain. In the next video, we will complete the activities chain by adding more activities until the goal is reached.